Welcome to the Energized Podcast, Lindsay, honey. Okay, I just want to tell everyone that the second I saw you on Instagram, I fell madly in love with your energy, your presence, your just the way that you show up for women is just so profound. And then when you sauntered into that room at Gabrielle Lyons Forever Strong Summit, I was like, oh my God, she's here. She's here. Like you don't know who you're going to expect to see. And you're always just like, I want to be surprised and delighted. And you
Yeah.
were my surprise and delight in so many ways.
Oh,
And I was like, okay, like, how am I going to go up and say something? I think I just like blundered my way through that conversation.
not at all. Not at all.
But you just ooze that kind of energy and the joy and really just embodying your authenticity, and I can tell that you are so heart driven, and that you are here to serve. Like that is
Mm.
so clear to me, and I'm just so happy to have you on the show.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here and thank you for the invite. It's just going to be so much fun.
Hmm. Well, I would love for you to just start and share a little bit of your story. Kind of what was that impetus? What was that defining moment for you, Lindsay, where you knew you're like, you know what? I am here to serve women. I'm here to help women step into their entrepreneurial power. I'm really helping them usher into that transformation, whatever that transformation may be.
Mm. I think like so many of us, it starts with my own personal journey and personal story. And I've been an entrepreneur for well over 10 years, but the first half of that journey was really spent. Now looking back, I can see that I was getting really restless because I wasn't really pushing myself. I wasn't doing things that were out of my comfort zone, things that forced me to grow. And I think when we know that we're here in this world and we're meant for more, however that looks, if you continue to choose your comfort zone, there will come a point where that resistance inside won't shut up. And that's the point that I found myself at. And I didn't know at the time why I was feeling so restless, but it led me down this path of looking at where I kept choosing my own comfort and safety over this impact that I knew I was meant to make. And the thing that scared me more than anything else was writing a book. And you've done it, so you know it's just such an emotional process. It's such a spiritual process, really. And I never planned to do anything more with the book. It was kind of a hybrid self published experience. And I just said yes to it. I said yes to joining this program that kind of helped you write a book to challenge myself. And what I learned through that process was I got to bump up against all the places where I would normally in the past choose comfort and choose to play small and let my excuses and my fear be louder than the possibility on the other side. And when that book was published, it came out. I was actually most afraid of people actually reading it. I wasn't afraid that no one would buy it. I was afraid that they would and that they would read it. But it started this whole bigger conversation that I didn't realize other people were craving, which came down to this simple idea that there's so many of us who feel very clearly that we are meant for more, that there is just a bigger possibility for us and for our lives. And the story that I heard over and over from the women in my life at that time was they would, in one breath, share with me their big dream or just that feeling that they were meant for more. And in the next breath, they would tell me why they weren't ready or they didn't know enough or they experienced a lot of fear. And every time I was like, hold the phone. Did no one tell you? That's what we all feel. Anyone you look up to right now, they're still actively dealing with all of those feelings. And it just became this mission to share more of the ups and the downs behind the scenes because I realized we were doing so many people a disservice in this age, when I was having this conversation where it was just mainly sharing the highlight reel. I think we're actually doing a better job now of sharing the real behind the scenes glimpses of what it takes to run a business, grow your family at the same time, to really step out of your comfort zone. It is not easy. It is not cute all the time, but I think the more that we talk openly about the good and the bad and the challenging, the more we give other people permission to step into this journey with us. And that accidentally inspired this event and this movement that now 7 years later reaches people around the globe. And, we sell out our annual event with hundreds of women every single year. And that was never part of the plan. It just started from my desire to have more of those real, authentic conversations.
Mm, mm. I want to dive a little deeper into kind of that comfort zone and what that resistance felt like for you. And was that first leap, was it the book? Or was there anything else? I was just curious, kind of, because I know so many
Yeah.
women are like, oh, like, what does that feel like? What am I bumping up? How does it feel to be bumping up against that? And what does it look like to take that first step?
I mean, for me, the first time that I actually stepped way outside my comfort zone was saying yes to writing a book. I and here's what I know to be true about so many others, but I'll call myself out on this. Up until that point, I could give 60 to 70% of my full potential and I could still produce results, which was kind of a tricky place to be in because I got acknowledgement, I got recognition, I made great money, I had this success on the outside, but deep down, it's not that I wasn't happy with it or wasn't grateful for it, but what was missing is I wasn't experiencing growth. And I realized how much that is one of my core values. So it took leaning into something that I actually didn't believe I could do. It took doing something and saying yes to something that had all of my fears come to the surface so that I could learn how to overcome them. And before I was choosing the very calculated fears, the very calculated risks. So I wouldn't go into something unless I knew and I kind of worked it out in my mind like this is probably going to go well. I never risked failure. I never risked looking stupid or not having something turn out the way I wanted. And the result was just a really small life compared to what I knew I was capable of. And what's tricky is most people around me wouldn't have said my life was small. And that's, I think, so often where we can also get tripped up is when other people are like, well, shouldn't you just be happy? Like, you already have a business. Why are you going to go and do this other thing? It doesn't matter what anyone else on the outside thinks. If you know that you're being pulled to do something new, to lean into a new challenge, to say yes to something uncomfortable, that is between you and your creator, wherever you believe those divine downloads come from. And there were plenty of people who thought it was just crazy that I was pursuing something different because what I already had was great. But I knew that I was settling for good. I wasn't actually going after what I was fully capable of, which is that next expansion of me.
Mm. And once you stepped into that next expansion, like, how did that feel? You know,
Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Next question.
was this specifically the book project? Because I was curious,
Yeah.
I'm oh gosh, books. It's all a process. I'm curious what whereas I know there's so many women listening who have a book in them right now. Who've
Mm,
wanted to write a book, who wanted to really put their genius on paper, and I was curious, kind of what was that process for you? And I'm so grateful to hear that you had some support. I'm so honest with people. Almost 8 books later, I'm not a book writer. I'm just going to tell you all right now. If you didn't know, I've had editors. I've had a team of people around me
yeah.
to make these books possible. I'm a researcher. I vomit words on paper. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a
Yeah.
prolific writer at all. Like at all, and I'm cool with that. Like I know my strengths. Like that's one thing
Mhm.
my husband and my team know. I'm like I'm so clear on what I do best, and
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of getting people who do what they do best in collaborating. Like who not how, so that's a big
Exactly.
big big proponent. So I was curious. I'm so proud to you're like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get some help to do it. Like I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna get this done. But what came up for you in that process?
Mm. Well, and the process that I went through was really it was a 12 or 16-week program. I don't even remember it anymore. And it gave us the education, the training, the mentorship, and the community to be in community with other people who were first time authors. But I physically wrote every single word on that page. I don't think for my second book I would. I think I would work with a team to help bring that project to life. But it was it was the journey that my soul needed because I had a big story of that I wasn't a writer, that I had a lot of fear about what people would think. Not not even if I failed, I had a lot more fear around what if I succeed, or a lot of like that tall poppy syndrome where, I come from a very small town and I was always the most ambitious one. And what are people going to think? Like, who does she think she is writing a book? A lot of those fears that now sound silly to me, but at that time they were very real and they were gripping. And so I think when we commit to something really big like that, it feels exciting at first. And I remember kind of showing up to that first call like, what am I doing? Like, I guess I'm writing a book, but it didn't feel real yet. And then, a few weeks in, as we started to actually do some of the writing, and I started to notice these fears show up. And this is what I talk about. If we're going to actually evolve, if we're going to step into this next version of ourselves, you have to choose something that's so big, it's going to force you to meet yourself in the place where old you would quit. And I met myself in that place so many times where I would just like wake up in the middle of the night. I felt like I had this elephant sitting on my chest, just like in panic, realizing like, oh my God, people are going to read this and maybe they'll judge me, maybe they'll criticize, whatever story was going on at the time. But I realized that like in those moments, there was this little voice, and I gave it a name because it just helped me to, I think, to relay this to so many others. And I know I'm not the only one who deals with this. I came to lovingly refer to it as my cute quit. And my cute quit sounded like, you have so much on your plate right now. You have this whole other business. This book thing is just really a distraction. Like, do you really need to be doing this right now? Maybe in another season. Maybe you should grow your audience more. Maybe when you have more time, your bandwidth is really tapped. You should give yourself more grace. And in the moment, that was a very logically sounding reason to not continue. And I
Mhm.
remember one day showing up to my Zoom call with my group, and I was showing up to at least tell them in person. I was going to be a grown up about it, but I was going to tell them this isn't the time. I'm going to bow out. And that day, we had to show up on this call. We had to read like 1,000 words that we had written. We had come to the call prepared, and that in itself was terrifying to someone who has,
That
deep
that feels
perfectionist.
terrifying to me too. I'm like, whoa,
Oh
whoa,
God, it was
whoa.
the worst. It was the worst. And I remember being like, well, okay, I paid for this. I'm going to show up and do it. And I read whatever I wrote that day, whatever excerpt, and someone on the call said, that was exactly what I needed to hear today. Because of you, I'm going to keep writing. And I remember being like, saying all the curse words in my mind because I knew in that moment that I couldn't quit. And I was so pissed about it. I was just mad because what I started to realize is I was just bumping up against the furthest outside my comfort zone I had ever gone. I'd never been this version of myself. So it started to trigger these very real feelings in my brain that like I was unsafe. And I think the more I've realized about how fear works and how our minds kind of work against us sometimes, that yes, it feels exciting. That's why we feel really encouraged at the beginning of any new journey, a health journey, a business journey. But your growth doesn't actually start until you get to the point where you want to quit. Because in that moment, you get to meet the old version of yourself and the potential new version of yourself, and you get to choose. And for my entire adult life, I think I was 33 when I wrote my book, I had chose to stay the same version. And no wonder I was just feeling unfulfilled at like a deep soul level. No amount of outward achievement could fill that void. And so every time I wanted to quit from that point forward, I just went back to that knowing, okay, you already know what it feels like to give up on this. You've gone down that path. I had podcast equipment that collected dust for 5 years before I ever started a podcast. I had all these big dreams. I had this failed blog, all these excuses and reasons why I shouldn't be doing this. And then in that moment, I would just kind of weigh the choices. Okay, I know what that feels like to quit and to not pursue this. Add it to the pile of all these big dreams that I've thought of and I've started, but I've never seen to the end. But what's over here? What if I choose the unknown and just see what happens? And every time I chose my future potential self, I grew in that moment and I gained a little bit of confidence. So the book writing process for me was a lot of that. It was like yo-yoing back and forth between I just kind of crossed another threshold and now I met a new fear and I really want to quit. And I really think it sounds very justified. Like I made it sound cute in my mind so I could justify quitting. But then in that moment, I'd be like, oh, now I hear it again. I hear this cute quit and now I know what's happening and I can't give into that. And it really was a life-changing experience in that I had actually never given my word to something that big, that outside my comfort zone, and actually completed it. So the version of me that finished writing the book was a completely transformed person because I stuck to my commitment. And that's, I think, so overlooked, that the power that lies in keeping our word to ourselves. The person you become when you literally start to know yourself as someone you can trust. And that's ultimately what set me on the path to do the things I'm doing now. But it was in those moments when I was really at war with myself, my old self, and I was at this crossroads, and I kept choosing to step into a version of myself I'd never been and just see what happened.
Mm. That's so powerful. And I just love the meeting that self who would quit, or you had known. You're like, I know her,
Mhm.
and I keep running up against her in this process, outside of just of showing up despite, because there's something to be said about showing up to those calls. I don't know if they were weekly or biweekly, or sitting down at the computer and chunking out that 3 hours at a time, whatever that looked like for you in the process to get the book done. Were there other tools, Lindsay, that you used to help you keep into your, like, to operate from your, what I call your future vision self? I was just
Mm,
curious. I launched a
yeah.
program in January, actually called Your Future Epic Health, and it was an epic failure
Ah, I love
because it was
those.
so different than what I've ever done before.
Yeah.
I'm always, it's always a hormone class or a hormone product, or helping to thrive in these transitions. But for me, anytime I've ever stepped into something big, whether it's a health journey or a business journey, career journey, a new book deal, manifesting my home on the beach,
Mm,
it was embodying the future version of myself.
yeah.
And that's always been the first step. Is I think everything's created twice, first in your mind, and then you get to work and you do the damn thing. And
So
so
true.
I thought this would really resonate. This is that first step, and I created the whole program,
Yeah.
and it just, my whether the marketing wasn't correct or whatever we didn't rock it, and it bombed. Which, girl, I love failing forward. I ain't gonna lie. So it was all good. But it was a lot of the process that I did to get myself ready. I'm working on a book proposal right now, and I'm embodying the version of myself who's got the book deal, who's got
Yes.
the ninth book deal. And so, what does that look like? And I have all these tools that I pull from during days where I'm just like, well, maybe I don't need this. I already got 8 books. Do I really need a ninth book? And so, like,
Yeah.
whatever languaging is in there. And so, I'd love to know if you have any tools to help you embody your future, because it's scary to step into that future person. And it's a little woo woo, and it's a little crunchy too. And so I'm curious, and what has been your process in that?
Yeah. It's changed so much, over time, but I for whatever reason, this is one element that's coming to my mind. I do a lot of the same practices that it sounds like you do, a lot of visualization, a lot of getting clear of what are those emotions? What is the state of being that I would be in, and how can I actually tap into that now? Because we always can.
Yeah.
Emotions and states of being can be created from thin air, just from our thoughts, our actions. But something that has really helped me, it's become kind of like this signature of the Powerhouse Women community is we have this hashtag, style your higher self. And there was this moment in the process, I was actually about to finish the final edits on the first manuscript. And I was talking with a friend one day, and she said, I'm really curious about the impact of style and fashion on helping us tap into those energies. And she's a performer, she's a recording artist, brilliant recording artist. And she said, especially as a performer, I see this in people like Rihanna and, these people who it's not just what they're wearing, it's actually what are they embodying, but the clothes kind of help to bring that out. And this conversation led to, some really deep work with all different people. I've worked with all different stylists, all different mentors, but I realized that I had grown so much, but what was happening was the outside didn't match the inside. And it wasn't just like, did I feel fashionable? Did I feel this? There was this energy that I knew my future self embodied. And I wasn't tapping into that with the current way I was presenting myself to the world, because this new me that was unlocking was more bold, was more willing to be seen. And a
Mm.
lot of how I presented myself up until that point was not meant to be seen. In fact, I used to have this label that I gave myself, and I'm the older sister of three siblings. My youngest sibling, my sister, is just one of the coolest, most fashionable. She and I couldn't be more different. And I used to call myself the vanilla sister, and not even realizing that that was like a chosen identity that then I would live into. And I meant it kind of in jest to say, oh, she's the one who's really willing to take risks and she's got tattoos and every cool color hair. And I didn't see myself, I really looked up to that, but I didn't see myself wanting to express in that same way. But what I really loved about her energy is that she just did not care what anyone else thought. And so I was actually admiring something about her that I didn't give myself permission to tap into. So I started to really play with that, as like simple as, wearing the thing that I'll notice another woman wearing. And for whatever reason, the energy of it just grabs my attention. And and then I hear this thought in my own mind, well, I could never.
Mhm.
And I started to challenge those thoughts, challenge the things that I said I couldn't wear or couldn't do with my style. And eventually, now I actually use style and the way I dress myself, the way I present myself, hair, makeup, the whole thing, not thinking that it ends there. But the way that I present myself does actually help me tap into a very real energy of the person I'm becoming. And I'm constantly going through these style evolutions now because of how powerful it's been as part of my transformation in the past. But I want to be really clear that it actually has nothing to do with the clothes. It has nothing to do with the hairstyle. It is everything about getting clear first about the energy I want to embody, and then noticing when in my outer exterior world, I notice that energy in a piece of clothing, in a photo of just, something that I could emulate style wise, and then realizing that I can create that within myself, and that style and fashion and beauty can actually be a really powerful access to it.
I am so grateful you said that. I mean, your style is just so amazing and sexy. And you can tell that is the energy that I loved so much about you, was this really graceful, I don't care what people think energy. And I just love that energy. I just
Mm,
love it.
which it
I
like
put
it's
this dress
so
on for you today, girl. Girl, I don't wear dress. I used to dress
right?
up all the time. I mean, honestly, no one ever
Yes.
saw me out of heels forever. Even my husband, and it was a moment, I'm
Yeah,
5'2",
yeah.
but I was always 5'5" everywhere I went. When I became a mama, and Viore is basically my
Totally.
my clothing of choice today. But I knew I had this interview with you, and I was like, I am going to show up in this dress, and I'll put some earrings on, I'll do the whole thing. And because I just wanted to, you just really inspired me. But that really, I mean, that really shows out. And I know you use a lot of style in your branding, especially when you're
Mhm.
creating new branding. And so, but I do really appreciate you going into the depth of you. I've only known you in your style.
Yeah.
I never saw vanilla Lindsay. I never saw it.
And that's the part that I want people to really take away from this is I just chuckle to myself now whenever, I love it. I love when people say that the style piece is now kind of synonymous with what they know me as, because what I want people to hear is that was a totally created context of myself. I actually just decided I'm going to learn how to be and feel stylish, not for anybody else, but to really connect with that part of me that loves style and loves fashion. So that might not resonate with you so much as something you want to embody, but there was a moment in time where I decided I'm just not going to be the vanilla sister anymore. I'm going to learn how to be this version that I actually deeply desire to be. So it's just a reminder to me in my life right now, where am I settling for labels that I've given myself that are just outdated? That's just actually not who I want to be. And what do I want to reinvent in its absence?
Yeah, the story you tell yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you get to tell a
Yes.
different story. I love that story so much. I never would have guessed that that was the story. It's so powerful and profound, and it really, it really is the perfect example of embodying who you want to become. And it doesn't have to be overnight. And I'd love to know, in that journey, because I believe it's probably been a journey for you.
Yeah.
How did it feel like it started? Like, obviously you realize, you're like, I don't have to be the vanilla sister anymore. I get to be
Hmm.
this beautiful, unapologetic, just owning myself and looking good and doing all the things. And not that you didn't look good doing whatever you were doing then either. But I want to, so what was the process of that? Was it identifying clothes on the street? Was it looking through magazines? Was it just a
Yeah.
couple pieces at a time? Just so that women kind of get a sense of, what does that journey look like to make that whatever that embodiment is?
Hmm. Oh, I love this question. And at the time, this friend that I mentioned I was in a conversation with actually she was developing a program around it. And I always hesitate to go too deep into that because it's not the same now. It doesn't actually exist in this current form. But what I'll speak to is the process that she helped me walk through, that you can either do it yourself, or I actually got a lot of it accelerated my process to work with someone who really had aspirational style. And I'll share a little bit of what that looked like. But the first thing that we did simply was kind of to identify the energy. If we gave it a word, what would it be? Now, if you can imagine vanilla sister Lindsay, you guys, if you're not seeing me right now, and I'm in my cozies today, so I'm not like my totally done up self, but I have like a very blunt, short blonde bob. My style, I would say right now in this season, I love, it's like more edgy. It's just kind of like bold, feminine, but powerful. And back then, I had like a lot of the same top in like every color you could buy it in, but just pretty, like, don't really deviate. Like once in a while, I would go a little crazy, maybe like a neckline that I didn't normally wear, but my hair was long and dark, like completely different, even just like physical transformation. And a lot of it was, this this way of hiding, this way of kind of blending in. And what we started to do is we identified these words. And for me, I would just talk to her about, well, what I wanted to transform. I wanted to be more comfortable being seen, and I wanted to be a little bit more bold. And so we just found these like anchor words that really embodied how I wanted to feel about myself. And then we would find photos that just carried that same energy. And everyone kind of responds to different things. I feel like we use our five senses all differently. I have a really strong gut response. So it's like if I got that gut feeling and I was kind of being pulled toward like a photo, I just didn't question it or didn't start to pick apart like, well, I could never wear that or I don't do that. We just kind of compiled this, first in words and energy and then in visuals to really encapsulate like, well, who is this version? Then if you really want to know like the depth of this process, I worked with a stylist and I let her come in my closet and get rid of anything that was not that. And I think people kind of cringe at the thought of like I'm going to share with you like what it looked like for me, but you could do this in any way. You could kind of look, now having this picture of who you want to be, you could put that up in front of you and go through your closet. This is actually still what I do, and I'll hold up a piece of clothing, or sometimes I'll actually put it on, and I'll just feel like how does the energy feel when I'm wearing this. And I'm really quick to get rid of things that I'm like, okay, that was a beautiful energy of a past season, but it's not actually the energy I'm embodying now. So got rid of a lot, went and kind of replaced, and we did some great, very budget friendly shopping. This doesn't have to be, a really expensive process. And then I did allow, so as part of this program, I allowed someone to completely change my hair without, I didn't really get it set. So it depends on like how deeply you want to go into this process. But I think it really was this understanding that all of it is, like I said, a created context. It's all a creation of what we want to be and who we want to be. And there are certain things at that point in my journey, I had been that version of Lindsay for so long. I really needed a pretty dramatic transformation. So like complete hair color change. It was a very pretty dramatic change for me at that time. But now in my journey, I don't need to do something completely drastic with my hair. I'm just making these micro evolutions as I go along. But, I do think the times when I've worked with and on and off, I'll work with people who are in the style industry to just pick things out for me that I wouldn't normally wear myself, because I have a very playful energy with the fashion piece of it. And like even if you want to start at this level of notice something throughout the next week that you see someone else wearing, and it's just that energy match and it just pulls you in for whatever reason. Mine back then was I just really had this story that I couldn't wear like a bold lipstick. I just thought I looked like a child playing dress up. And so I just started to lean into those things that I would tell myself, okay, I love this on other people, but I feel like I can't pull that off. And I just started to play with challenging that. And so I found, like a red lipstick shade that complemented my skin, and I just started like really leaning into wearing that just to the grocery store, just to places where, it's not like that significant, and just be okay with like feeling a little bit like I would feel like everyone was staring at me. They weren't, but it was just that discomfort with being more visible, doing something with my hair, my style that was more bold. And it started to just transform and show me how I was cutting myself off from the ability to feel these energies by writing it off before I ever even tried it. So that's a lot of times what I'll tell people to do. It's like, if it's you see someone wearing a leather jacket and you're like, oh, I could never, go, find a inexpensive, faux leather jacket, just like use it as an experiment to see who is that version of you.
Mm.
Like, start to try things that maybe you're not allowing yourself to try, and you just might find your new energy lies on the other side of the things that you think right now you can't pull off.
I love that. Oh, I love that so much. I so appreciate you walking through the process. I use during times, especially when I'm speaking and doing a lot of events, I use Rent the Runway, and
Yeah,
I
that's
just
such a
love
fun
because
way to try new
yeah,
things.
and there's a lot
Oh,
of,
brilliant.
I love the reviews and the girls who try it. And I have you'll have a good sense of kind of what fits you. But you can get a little bit more, risky and playful. And you're just renting this for a month and wear it out. I was
Yes.
going to wear red lipstick to this, but I wanted to make sure I was on time and it was downstairs. So I was like, I'm just going to let it go. But but it's so funny because I think some women like myself, I was wearing dark lips. I was always dressed. I was always in outfits. And then, you enter into this new era where all that shifts. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden, if the lipstick felt uncomfortable to me again, I'm like, oh, gloss is
Mm.
fine. I can do just gloss. And so I've become more of a gloss girl where I used to wear bold lipstick all the time. And so just
Yeah.
even refining yourself or re-embodying that, hopefully a newer version of you, I think.
Yes.
So I'm curious, for your events, for the big annual event. I know you have multiple events. I want to kind of segue into kind of the inspiration around creating, a live event. But do you find that women show up in their best? Do they dress up for the event? Is there an energy there for that? I
Oh,
haven't been to one
yes.
yet, so I don't
I
know.
was gonna say, and I say this with so much love. My favorite thing is to see someone year one and how they dress versus when they come back year two. Because as much as we say, and people will hear me talk on my podcast about like, if there was ever a room that you've got that outfit that you've been wanting to wear, waiting for an opportunity to wear, you think you couldn't wear it anywhere else, this is the room where you can wear it. And I set the tone because I will absolutely be wearing the most extra, like very fashionable, very just like whatever I want to embody that year, I'm going for it. And so you can too. And so it's my favorite to see, maybe year one, it's like, oh, this is a business event. Maybe I'll go with like a blazer and some cute heels. And then the next year they're wearing like this fabulous, like full head to toe sequin moment. And I just think it's become such a really a trademark of our community because at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of different things in life. We're all kind of waiting for someone else to go first and be that permission. And I know that that was me for so long. Even still to this day, when I go to events, I'm like, ooh, what are other people going to be wearing? And sometimes I'll dress, according to that. Or if I don't really know an event, I'll kind of try to fit the energy of it. But then there's others where I'm like, well, what do I actually want to wear? Who do I want to be today? Who do I want to bring to that room? And what's the style that can help me pull that energy out of myself? So yeah, the fashion, this is definitely a room where you can wear whatever feels like your highest self. And that could be sweatpants like quite literally, could be sweatpants, it could be a ball gown, but we want people to bring their most authentic, most self-expressed self to this room.
I love that. Well, I want to talk about the event in creating live events, because I'm sure that was another big step after the book. Just deciding like this is where we need to, this is where I need to go. This is how I'm really going to show up and serve at my highest level. And I know that it's been such an incredible success, and I'm sure it feels so good. But what did that process look like? How did you know it was time to move into live events?
The first event was really meant to just be a celebration of the book launching, and I didn't ever have plans to expand it beyond that. It was just a little 4-hour afternoon, on a Sunday, and when it finished, there were so many women who said, "Okay, well, what's next?" And I remember thinking to myself, "What do you mean, what's next?" Like,
You're like,
I
buy the
hadn't
book,
even
read it.
I was like, "I haven't even thought in this far yet." But there was something in me that unlocked that day. It was, because I self-published the book, I, was really the marketing behind it. I was all of it. And my book publisher said, an event, a lot of people will do an event to celebrate a book launch. And uh, immediately when I started to think about that, I knew that I didn't want to just do an event that was kind of all about me. That didn't feel very fun. And also I was just really sure no one would come to that event. And then I just started to think about the kind of conversations that really inspired the book itself. And having been to other personal development events, and I really love the energy, that an event creates and the transformations it can create. So I just started to expand the vision a little bit. Well, maybe we could have speakers. Maybe, it could just be this moment to have these really authentic conversations in a room. And so that first event was in 2017. It's wild to think about that. And we're going into year 7 now, because I did eventually say, okay, well, I guess I'll do another event next year. So it became this annual opportunity for women to come together and really celebrate their own growth and who they had become over the previous year. But also, we almost kind of treat it like our New Year's Eve, and we start to cast the vision for who we want to become and this version of ourselves we want to step into in the coming year. And all really grounded in community and connection to support you in that journey, because for a lot of us, we aren't necessarily right now surrounded by only people who fully celebrate that expansion. A lot of us have at least a few people in our life very close to us who probably just don't really get your big vision, or they think you're kind of the weird one at Thanksgiving, or they just don't have the capacity to think as big as you're thinking, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. They can support us in other ways. But if you know that you're really meant for something big in this world, whether it's a business or not, you're hungry to grow and expand in your career, your health, your relationships, your life, it is vital that you find people who are on that same expansion journey. If not, I think subconsciously we all would end up limiting ourselves if we're not surrounded by other people who really can expand that vision for us. So that's really kind of what the event has become, this annual place to come together, celebrate that journey, but also push each other to keep growing.
I love it. And then when does it take place? I know the big annual, because you have multiple events, but this is the big one.
We do. So the annual event is typically August or September. In 2024, it's August 10th. And then we do a kickoff party on Friday night, August 9th, which is so much fun. I always tell people, especially if you're coming for the first time, do the full VIP experience. You want like the full experience. And so I can't wait for that. This is going to be our biggest event ever. And then because my heart beats for connection, for in-person connection specifically. So we're now experimenting with some smaller, more intimate retreats for women who are just at a higher level of business, where the kind of support you require, just quite honestly, is different at that level. And we're doing some cool stuff with our podcast, doing live little pop-up podcast events, which is also just an opportunity to bring people together and realize that they're not alone on this wild journey of growth and entrepreneurship and just being a woman who's up to big things in the world. So yeah, I mean, if people are connected on our Instagram, we usually share everything there.
Perfect. Oh my gosh, Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing. Oh, all the yummy things that you've shared today. I know you obviously you have a podcast. Like you dusted all that equipment off and
Finally
got it
dusted it
done.
off.
And so
Yes.
share us with us the podcast, and where else would you, I know, I mean, go to Instagram just to see her sexy looks. I mean, oh my goodness, it's so amazing.
You're
it's so
so
incredible.
sweet. Oh my
And
gosh.
to be inspired. I mean, I love reading your content. I love your message. I love the message that you brought here. I feel very inspired. I'm in the process of getting ready for a TED Talk, but I've been
Yes,
working on
that's
my
right.
proposal. Yeah, and so they're meant to come together. But I've been dragging my feet a little bit on the TED Talk, mainly because I'm like, oh, we just get this proposal done first, like the one thing. But I know that there's something there. There's a resistance. Like I've even spoken to 40,000 people in a stadium, and yet there's something about the TED Talk that I'm just like, oh, I don't know. Is this the thing? You know, and
Yeah.
and so listening to you today, it just feeling so inspired to get back into, because it's a step-by-step process. And I'm a quarter of a way into it. So,
Mhm.
and then I've been like, well, it's the holidays, and I'm working on the book proposal, and just all the things I can just, we just talk ourselves out of, you know.
I'm like, that's exactly what my cute quit sounds like. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
how
yeah, yeah,
weird.
exactly. And
I do warn people. I'm not the friend to tell your like next big
oh,
leap, big
good.
goal, unless you want to be held accountable. So it's recorded now.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm such a fan of accountability,
Yeah,
such a
yeah.
fan of accountability. And so yeah, I'm so grateful I shared. But as I was listening to you share that, I was like, oh, the TED Talk, Mariza, the TED Talk. Just like get your butt back at it, and
Yeah.
because I am so excited about it, and
Mhm.
there's some crunchiness. And it's so funny because like you said, no matter where you are at your level, there's always that thing, that next thing that feels so uncomfortable, that you're going to
Mhm.
find you're trying to talk yourself out of, or trying to talk yourself to stall. And I'm not a natural
Yeah.
procrastinator, but this is where I'm dragging myself here. Um,
Yeah.
and because there's so many things that I have just done, so I wouldn't call it haphazard, but definitely messy. Like
Mm.
I'm like, let's just do it. Let's just see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
And then there's these things where I get really caught up in the perfectionism of it, which is so weird to kind of ride the spectrum.
Mm.
Because I feel like I have so much evidence to say that that's not that I am an executor. I am just like, I don't care. Let's just find out what happens on the back end.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel a lot like more of a high stakes game with the TED Talk than a lot of other things.
Mm. And it is higher stakes. It's so beautiful, I think, for you to share that, and even for everybody listening to get to hear that at the level you're playing, which you've had so much incredible impact and success, there's another level for you to unlock. And I there was a version of me, a past version of me that actually believed it got easier as you keep growing. But like you said, the stakes get higher, so it actually gets even more intense. The resistance gets stronger with every new level, but you also get better and you start to trust yourself more to take these bigger risks. And that's the journey that we're all on. I'm 10 plus years in. It has not gotten any easier. In fact, I'm more uncomfortable today than I've ever been before. But I also trust myself because I've stacked the evidence that I can put my word to something that scares the bleep out of me, and I can follow through with that no matter what happens. And that's ultimately, I think, the feeling that we're all after is knowing yourself as someone you can count on.
That was really powerful. And just now and then is, yeah, one of the things as a mom, when I stepped into, one of the questions I asked myself when I became a mother was who I need to
Mm,
become this little light beans mom. And man, what an insane transformation to become her.
mm,
Because it was really nothing I could take from my childhood into motherhood. And
yeah.
and I'm just so proud of the version I've become, and so excited for the evolved version of that. Um, and, you know, one of the things I promised myself was that my word was golden to my son, that if I said something that I was going to do, I was going to do it. Like I always wanted him to feel so safe in that
Mm,
if mama says what she says she's going to do, like I know she's going to follow through.
Mm,
But and I've done a lot of that for myself too, for the most
yeah.
part. But there are moments where my word has not been golden to me. And so when
Yeah.
you said that today, it really landed for me because it is a standard, like the
Mhm.
foundation of my standard, at least even for my child, is that what I say, my word is golden. But
Yeah.
that hasn't always been, that hasn't been true for me consistently over the last couple of years, whether it was health challenges or mamahood challenges or whatever it may be. And like that landed in such a powerful way of like, okay, who do I need to become to, to my word be golden for
Mhm.
myself, because I am as worthy of that as my son is of that from me.
Mm.
So
That's
yeah,
so beautifully
I was
said.
like, oh, let me just work that out.
So well said. And just your level of vulnerability and self-awareness, like those are the moments. It's like when we all of a sudden pull back the curtain and we see the next opportunity for our own expansion. It's in those micro adjustments of realizing like, wait, this actually is a core value of mine. And I do this for my son, but now I'm starting to see these places where I haven't fully shown up as that for myself. And now all there is to do is go back to that. I feel like I got so much from hearing you share that too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, there were so many things that landed for me in your journey, Lindsay. And I cannot tell you how much gratitude I have for this beautiful conversation and for you sharing so many vulnerable moments, so many big moments and I wouldn't call it the messy of it, but like the things around it that you had to step into, like the stories you had to release or the limiting beliefs that you had to release and the way that you showed up every time, even when it was super uncomfortable. That's the reality of it all.
Mhm.
And I know so many of us can see ourselves in you, in that process. And then you walk out of this, hopefully everyone's walking out of this conversation and thinking to themselves, like, I can embody who I want to become. I can step into,
Mhm.
I can take that next step into who I know I'm meant for, who I know I'm designed to be. And I
Yeah.
think that's what life is all about, is stepping into who we really think we are meant to be and stepping into our growth.
Yeah. Oh, that's so well said. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be here to have this conversation with you. And really, I just hope everyone hears exactly what they needed to hear from it. And whatever kind of hit your heart, that was for you. That part was for you. And there's something there for you to explore and get curious about. And that's the journey that all of us are on.
Mm. Well, I'll have the book and Instagram and the podcast and the event as well. I'm assuming people can start signing up for it, or at least there's a wait list for it as well. Is there a wait list for it? So
We
I love logistics. I'm
Yes,
such a
I love
Virgo.
you for it. Oh, please. I'm like, I'm a Capricorn, but very detail oriented. So yes, please, like all the details. Depending on when people will hear this episode, about a month from now, the tickets will open. So mid-March timeframe. And up until then, if you just go to powerhousewomenevent.com, it'll direct you either to the wait list, or if tickets are available, it'll show you your options for that. But yeah, would love to see you, my beautiful
Oh my
friend.
gosh, I
If
am,
not,
let me tell you, I
I
am
was
going to
gonna
move
say,
mountains to make it happen.
you
I'm
have
going to
to
be there.
come.
There's no reason why I will not be
Oh.
there. So I'm making a commitment. Um, I have another event for that's the same time as your upcoming event coming up, but
Oh, yes,
I really,
right.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I can't wait to be I want to see it. And I'm going to get all my outfits ready,
I
you
know.
know?
I'm like, if nothing else, I just think I tell people, it looks really fun on social media, all the videos and, the dancing and the just self-expression. And that is a huge part of it. But there's an energy in the room that actually can't be put into words. But I promise you, you will leave believing in yourself more deeply than you did when you walked in. And that in itself is transformational. So I can't wait. I'll be there.
Yeah, well, I can't. One of the reasons why I want to go is I just want to see you in your magic. I want to just be there cheering you on. And obviously, I know I'm going to get so much from it, but just getting to see you do you is why I want a ticket.
You're so sweet. Well, I can't wait to see you there.
I'll be there. All right, honey. Thank you so much for coming on again. Oh, mm. And I'm inviting everyone. This will go out around the same time the tickets will be released. Go to the website, get on the wait list, get the ticket, show up for yourself. That's really what it's all about.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation.
Mhm.